Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Namaste, and welcome to today's panel, How We Built Global Brands from India. My name is Johnny Steele. I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing here at Payoneer, and it's an absolute pleasure to be with you today and with these three amazing and inspiring entrepreneurs to learn about how they built their global brands. For the last 4 years, every time around this time of year, I've been coming to India to attend and speak at the Payoneer Forum. I've been in the last couple of years to Delhi, to Mumbai, and to Ahmedabad. And it's been a real pleasure to get to meet and see and listen to the Indian entrepreneurs, to learn about e-commerce in India and exporting and global cross-border trade. This year is a little bit different. I hope everybody who's with us today is staying safe and doing okay. And for us at Payoneer, there was no doubt that we were going to have to figure out a different way to be able to do these Payoneer forums. And that's what brought about Beyond India. And for me, it's great to be here today. I've even made an effort, here I am in our global headquarters, to actually come to the Delhi meeting room of our office, so I can truly say that I am broadcasting live from Delhi, albeit a different Delhi on the other side of the world. One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to is How I Built This with Guy Raz. I'm sure many of you listen to it. He's had on the podcast so many inspiring entrepreneurs. Ben and Jerry from Ben & Jerry's have been on it, the founder of Airbnb, and a whole host of other entrepreneurs. And I feel that today's session is really a How I Built This with Guy Raz that we are bringing to India and really putting a spotlight on three amazing entrepreneurs. So I'd like to take a moment just to welcome our three speakers. We have Bala Sada, who's the founder of Vadam Teas. We have Harshal Ved, the VP Sales at Shifu, Play Shifu, and Trisha Rajani, COO of Dr. Vaidas, an Indian herbal medicine website and brand. These are three amazing entrepreneurs, and we're going to learn plenty about them and their story. And hopefully all of you guys today are going to get a chance to learn and to get tips and inspiration that hopefully you can take with to your business as well. So to get started, my first question is, would you please share a little brief story of how your brand came to be? What was the original idea? What was the inspiration? And what was the roots of your business? I know some of your businesses actually go back a long time. So maybe Trisha, would you like to take that question first?
Sure. Thank you so much, Johnny, for having us. And thank you everyone who's tuned in. So I'll just tell you a little about our journey and how it started. So it's actually been in our founder Arjun Vaidya's family for the last 150 years. There are 5 generations of doctors who've passed on about 100 plus formulations and kind of kept improving on it. So Arjun actually studied at Brown University in the US. And while he was there, he saw the whole change of yoga, right? How the Western world, brands like Lululemon actually took yoga and made it a global brand, And he came back, thinking that, most people who go from India usually say, okay, let's work for a few years in the US before we come back. But he's like, no, I need to come back to India right away. He spent some time in private equity to understand the e-commerce and the consumer space in India itself. And he kind of realized that I want to be the one to take Ayurveda to the globe. I want to be the one who takes this 5,000-year-old Indian science, ancient science, and actually takes it to the world. So all our packaging actually says proudly Indian for that reason. Unlike other Ayurveda brands, we actually went with the digital first approach, not the offline approach that was there. He was like, I want to do something different. I want to go directly to the consumer. So we actually built it on our own website, Dr. Vaidya's first. And that's the journey so far. So it's not that long. It's just about 2.5 years since we've repackaged this as a new brand, from a clinic which would see 300-400 patients a day to a brand that actually reaches globally. So that's just a little about Dr. Vaidya's journey and how we got inspired and started.
Amazing. So I think we can all be confident that Dr. Vaidya is going to be just as well known as Lululemon in the United States in a few years. Bala, why don't you tell us a little bit about the origins of your brand?
Absolutely. Firstly, thanks, Johnny, for having me on this panel. Very excited to be amongst all these, all of the other entrepreneurs at this event as well. So about us, Johnny, we started Vadam 5 years back in 2015 with a very simple vision and dream, you could say, of taking India's finest teas and superfoods to the world under a homegrown label. I'll just share three insights for you to understand, what we're trying to solve here. One, as we all know, India is one of the largest producers and exporters of tea in the world, right? So 25% of the world's production happens in India. But unfortunately, right since 200 years back, since when the Britishers planted the first crop, most of our teas have been actually exported, the quality tea, right? So the CTC tea, which we consume in India, is actually the lower grade of tea. But all the quality orthodox teas are actually exported across the world at single digit margins to foreign brands, who would obviously then package it, right? And we wanted to change that, right? I think we thought, today we are talking about direct trade, ethical trade, fair trade as a narrative, right? And here I was thinking that, how more direct trade can we be if we can, source teas here and, get it delivered to consumers across the world. That was one. Number two, I think, unlike fine wine or liquor, some of these products we sell, tea, spices, herbs, they lose flavor with time, right? So tea is better when it's more fresh, right? And if you look at the supply chain, right, from the farms in India to a customer sitting in New York or London or Tokyo, right, there are multiple middlemen in between, right? From an auction house to an exporter to an importer, blender, anywhere between 6 to 12 middlemen in between. And by the time consumers were getting the tea, it was way old and stale, right? Not as high quality as it was, and not as fresh as in the gardens, right? And somebody I personally come with a lineage of over 85 years in tea. So my family's been into tea for the last 85 years, primarily into bulk exports. Again, like most of Indian brands, most of Indian companies, no value addition. So I had tasted teas in the garden, so I knew the difference, right? When I went to, say, New York to taste these teas. So that is one thing we thought we could solve. And lastly, I think, just the fact that, when you go to buy, we just thought we had a ticket to win, right? You buy wine from France, you buy chocolates from Switzerland, right? And for some goddamn reason, when you walk into a Taj hotel in India, you're greeted in a sari, but when you get into your room, it's Twinings of London selling you Darjeeling tea, right? So, honestly, me and the entire team at Vadam, we take that very personally. And we want to change that. And that's why, we said, why can't we start a brand and, take India global? Of course, when you look at trying to build a global brand, there are multiple challenges, which I would love to talk about. But that's how the journey started. And today, I think we've been fortunate. We have shipped our teas to over 100 plus countries. We have raised over $17 million in funding. We've been endorsed by global celebrities like Oprah, Ellen, Mariah Carey. So, today, I think we've taken some baby steps. I would say it's a big industry. To actually, get to where we want to take India tea.
Amazing. And I think I read somewhere online that Vadam is actually your father's name backwards. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's yes, absolutely. So my father, his first name is Madhav, so it's a reverse anagram.
So like a hat tip to the heritage and the family roots in the business. Absolutely. That's really nice. Harshal, please tell us your brief story.
Sure. So Pleshifu, first of all, Johnny, thanks so much for having me in the panel. Pleshifu started in 2016 by Vivek and Dinesh. Both of them were, friends from for 10 years when they started, and they were thinking of multiple ideas of, what to do next. And one of the challenges that they were facing was to engage their kids. So both of them were young parents at that time, and so that problem statement of, how to engage their own kids actually, changed into a business idea. And what they realized was that traditional toys have very sort of, limited engagement power to hold the kids because of the low attention span. And that is how the idea of augmented reality came in. And this actually, transformed into a business idea. And right from a small sort of a bedroom, now we are present in 20 countries across the globe.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think as a father of two young kids, certainly the last 6 months have been a challenging time to keep them busy. So innovation in your category is absolutely key at the moment. So let me move on to my second question. And the second question is about going beyond borders. And a few of you already touched on this. You have a huge domestic market in India. So at what point did you realize that you wanted to take your brand global and seek customers beyond borders? Why don't we start this time with Bala?
Right. So I think, Johnny, for us, it was a very simple decision. Honestly, even till today, I think less than 5% of our revenue comes from India. We've in fact launched in India formally only late last year. So for us, I think even though India is a big tea market, the kind of teas which were getting exported is what we were targeting, which are higher value, more premium, value addition was much higher there. And that's a problem we thought we could solve. So I think that was for us, it was always about, I mean, India will happen. I mean, it was always about when rather than if. But yeah, I think for us, we were very clear that, the market outside is what we want to target and probably disrupt, if I can use that word. Because I'll tell you honestly, a lot of people tend to ask us, I'm sure a lot of us fellow guys on the panel as well, that, what, I mean, and, there's so many products you can make in India and try to take it global. But I think when you go to a foreign market, you need a ticket to win, right? I mean, you can't take a personal care product from India and just go there and assume it will sell, right? Because see, one thing is, if you're competing if you're in the US, you're competing with folks who have been born and brought up there, right? So they understand the culture, the customers much more than you will ever do, right? So for you, what is your, ticket to win? I think that identifying that is extremely important. And for us, we knew that India grows these teas, and no matter what you go, 1/3 of the cup of tea being consumed in the US, for example, comes from India, right? So we knew we could, actually sort of build that story up. And of course, if we can make available a much better product, I think, I think we can probably do something there. And similarly, I think with what Prisha and Arjun are doing, right, with Dr. Vaidya's, right? I think Ayurveda is known for, like tea, I mean, India is known for Ayurveda. So I think that's pretty much the reason why we thought, let's start with foreign markets first.
So that's really interesting that you are effectively a global first business as opposed to dealing with the domestic market. Harshal, how was it with your business? Which direction did you go?
Yeah, it was sort of mix of an insight and an accident, if I can say so, because we knew that we were making products which were based on high technology. So we make augmented reality based games and toys, and they need high-end devices to function, right? Back in 2016, the mobile penetration or the tablet penetration as percentage of population was always higher in the Western world as compared to India. But we spent a lot of time in fine-tuning the product for India. So the advantage was that the product was functioning well with even the low-end devices. So it would function better with the high-end devices. So we launched the Kickstarter campaign in 2017, and that sort of was a huge success. That sort of gave us idea on the products that we are making are suited better for the developed world than it is for the market, which has still a low penetration for the high-end devices.
Great. And Trisha, when did you decide, and which direction did you go?
Sure. So unlike Bala, we actually did it the other way around, right? We launched in India first, and in Ayurveda, it's obviously a bit different in terms of regulation, in terms of country specific as well. So when we realized that actually people are much more conscious, right? People care about what they consume, why are they consuming it? They read the label more, they want to know what it is. Everyone's going from more of an organic, natural lifestyle, right? So that's when we actually saw the opportunity. Starbucks launched a turmeric latte, which in every Indian household, the haldi is had by all of us in all our meals, right? So this change is come into play that, okay, actually there are so many amazing herbs out there. There are so many amazing products out there. And India is the best place for it, right? It's been here for 5,000 years. So when we saw this opportunity and this acceptance level come in, right? That, okay, we're actually curious, the knowledge built, that's when we are actually realized that, okay, there is demand. And truthfully for us, it was slightly different. It was when we were more approached by countries, platforms, etc., to say, hey, we are seeing demand for this. Can you help us? And I guess because in India also at times we do have a little bit of a taboo when it comes to Ayurveda, because it's still so new in one sense in terms of it becoming a product business, that people question like authenticity, what kind of trials are done. You still compare it to pharma product, so that whole authenticity, building the certification, all of that is honestly also been a challenge. But I think that's where also people need to be more educated, and that's where when we got such opportunities, we took them.
And I was recently reading the Amazon report for 2020 about exports from India. And there are certain categories that really always come up in that top of the league: fabrics, leathers, sheets, home and kitchen. These are categories that India is extremely strong in and famous for. And I'm sure many of our attendees in today's session are from those the verticals. What I think is really interesting about you guys is that there are some which are maybe sort of traditional or authentically Indian products, but not necessarily the most popular for exporting. And I think, Harsh, I'd love to start with you on this one, because I don't think India is famous or especially well known for selling and exporting and manufacturing toys. So tell us a bit about what made you believe that you could actually be successful in this category internationally.
Yeah, that's really true, Johnny. I mean, if you think of toys, you would not sort of come across an Indian brand who has sort of make it big on the global stage. So we weren't initially very sure on how the products would do, and toy manufacturing is actually a very expensive sort of business, because you invest in designs, you invest in mold cost, and you are essentially catering to the most challenging customers, which are like 4-year-olds. So if they don't like it, nothing can convince them to like. I mean, as a parent, you would probably know that. So that is why we did a pivot. We did a Kickstarter campaign to test out the product. So we launched a campaign on Kickstarter with a prototype, and the success that we sort of received was tremendous. Like, we received more than 1,500 backers in over a period of a month or so, and backers from 60 odd countries. So that is how we were convinced that the products that we are making are sort of acceptable to the to market beyond India.
Really interesting. And Bala, on that same theme, I guess, certainly as an Englishman, and you spoke before about English brands that are known for tea, but where's the tea actually coming from? When you went out there and thought, okay, I'm going to take this brand and make it authentically Indian brand and sell to the world, were you imagining that this was going to be something that would be a challenge in order to, break in and have your tea bags in those hotel rooms in London? Bala, we can't hear you.
Hello, so sorry. Johnny, I think definitely, right? I think we've sort of faced our own set of challenges. In fact, I remember, I keep sharing this anecdote, but I remember speaking to the CMO of a big consumer brand in India when I was looking to start. And he actually told me that, Bala, don't put India in your logo, right? And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do, right? I mean, I can't discount that piece, because, I mean, in the last 5-7 years, because of entrepreneurs like in the panel and some of the other successful brands we see, the trust for Indian brands is going up, but it was not the same 5 years back or 10 years back, right? And I think that is why for us, I think the early days was almost about, getting to the top of the pyramid, connoisseur consumers, convincing them that this is probably the best tea they've had, and relying on word of mouth till we actually do anything else, right? And that's what we did. I mean, I remember the first year was primarily about reaching out to blogs and tea groups and tea communities in some of these markets. US and Europe, UK, Germany is our second and third market in terms of revenue, right? And I think only when we could actually build that trust with the initial set of people, then we realized that a lot of more trust started sort of getting built in for the brand. And I think since then it's been relatively easier, is what I would say.
Great. And Trisha, I'll ask the question to you a little bit differently, because your product, your brand is so authentically Indian in the first place. But in some ways, you had to actually create a category in say, the US market of demand. And how did you go about doing that? There's already plenty of demand for fabrics and leathers and sheets and things like that. But how did you go about creating this category and creating the awareness?
So truthfully, I think that we weren't the ones who created the category. I think after, to be very honest, the explosion of yoga, Ayurveda followed next. I think genuinely that a lot of people just wanted to learn more and know more. So we had to spend a lot more time figuring out what is it that people are interested to learn about. Interestingly, we found that a consumer in India and a consumer in the West, for example, in America, they care about similar things, but in the West, they actually want to know much more detail, right? Where this herb, not just by the name, what plant does it come from? How is it being used? What is the benefit, right? Additional layers. So I think that took some time to figure out and understand that okay, people are actually curious. So how can you actually give them that information? And honestly, there were a few players in the West as well who started, like Banyan Botanicals, for example, another brand, who I think did a very good job also educating consumers to know about Ayurveda as a science as well. And I do think that due to yoga, there was a spillover. So I think it's a lot of it has to be with how do we constantly educate and make people aware, start simpler. Even our entire labels, right? Like what we sell in India is very different from what we sell in the US in terms of the information we share, the formats we share it in. So I think it's just understanding each community and each area which you enter and what they require, what information they require, and the best you can serve it to them.
I think that's a great segue to my next question, which is about the challenges of selling to overseas customers. So I think, Trisha, you just touched on a really specific point about the difference there as sometimes, and maybe when we talk about overseas customers, we're going to be talking about the US market, but if you're selling in other geographies as well, feel free to comment on it. How are those consumers in different countries that you're selling to different in the kind of stuff that they're interested in hearing from you? So Bala, why don't you share?
Right. So I think in terms of challenges, I think, Johnny, I think like I mentioned, right, I think for us, how do we convince somebody to buy from a new brand from a different country? And also the fact that, I think one of the things which actually benefited us while we were building this was the fact that a lot of consumers in the US and Europe, right, today were very, very conscious of consuming brands which have a story, right? I mean, people are bored of perfect brands which can humanize the entire experience. Direct trade, fair trade is so important to the overall story, right? And I think, I don't know, a lot of people don't know this, but tea is also the second largest employer of organized labor in India, right? And the industry is plagued with a lot of problems, primarily because of the absence of a homegrown brand, right? All these teas are exported and there's no value addition being retained, no value being retained in India, right? So I think for us, I think more than, I think those two challenges which I talked to you about, right? I think for us, right from day one, it was about sharing the story very frankly with our consumers, which I think just helped us quite a bit.
Excellent. So it's the authenticity and the storytelling, which is so interesting. Harshal, tell us about selling toys and experiences like that to US consumers or consumers in other countries. How are they different?
I mean, to be honest, selling in US was not the biggest challenge that we encountered because, India sort of mirrors US audience when it comes to toys. So what would usually work with in US would sort of work in India as well. So we had, study groups or parent state group where we could, test our prototypes and then we can launch in the US. The challenging part was, when we launched in Korea, Japan, Russia, Europe, because that comes with an sort of an aspect of localization where our apps need to have the authentic sort of language and the voiceover. So that was the challenging part, and we had to invest in sort of good translators, voiceover artists, and that took actually a bit of time. But now all our applications are in more than 9 to 10 languages each product. So that was the challenging part. We get a lot of requests from Israel as well, to have the applications in Hebrew. Probably one day.
I'm sure there's a lot of demand all over the world. Let's move on, and we can't ignore COVID in this conversation. I hope you and your employees are doing okay. How has the pandemic impacted your business, and has it impacted at all your brand positioning? We've seen quite a few brands start to tell their story in a slightly different way due to the changing environment that we live in today. So why don't we start with you, Trisha?
So I think it has been tough for everyone. It has been tough in terms of operations more. To be honest, from a business standpoint, rules keep changing, regulations keep changing. Our office is centered in Mumbai, which is one of the big hotspots, and our factory is in Gujarat, in a place called Silvassa. So I think operationally, yes, it's been like to launch a new product, it's taken 10 times more the effort. But I mean, super proud of our team that we managed to launch 7 new products, despite all of this, all related to immunity, a fruit and veggie wash for, vegetables, a sanitizer, herbal sanitizer. So I don't think our story, to be very honest, has changed. I think the demand of the consumer though has pivoted. So we always did have certain immunity related products within our range, but we started getting a lot more demand for it, right? We launched a lot more products as well, but the category itself changed a little. So if I look at our pie chart of categories, immunity definitely has evolved, right, over the last few months, and I think honestly will continue to grow too. So, and this is, I think, within India and outside of India as well, right? People are now hearing buzzwords of immunity, buzzwords of vitamin C or amla or Indian gooseberry. People are getting more curious about it. They want to consume it. So it's just about trying to figure out the right format to give it to people. So either in the form of a powder, in the form of a capsule. That preference changes as well. But I think for us, the story hasn't changed. It's just it's a bit of a happy time that people are actually realizing that, okay, we don't need to go only towards the end, but this can be a preventive measure as well. Because normally people come to Ayurveda at times saying that, okay, as a last resort. So I think even the approach of, okay, let's explore it as a first resort is what's changing in people's mindset. So I think that's a positive change actually that we see as a category.
Absolutely. And I think, everybody's looking for opportunities to improve their wellness at the moment and improve hygiene. So I think, there's a far greater openness to explore options from around the world. Harshal, I'm sure your category has been through a transformation this year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think so, as more and more kids are home, schools have been shut down, parents at home are looking to keep their kids engaged. In countries like India, where there was always reluctance to hand over a mobile device or a tablet to kids, more and more kids are open to the idea that probably online is the way where kids would learn. So there is more acceptability to the products where it was not there. And for example, in the developed world where the penetration was always high, the products are in demand because you need kids to learn when the schools are closed, and at the same time you need tools to keep kids engaged for a longer duration of time.
Sure. So we're coming towards the end. I've got a couple more questions to pose. One is that you're competing, as many of you, against large incumbent brands. I'd love to ask this question to you, Bala. What's your secret to breaking through? You mentioned before you managed to get endorsements and coverage from Oprah and Ellen. How does a brand do that? That sounds like a dream come true to get that kind of publicity. So what's your secret for competing against large incumbent brands? And there are plenty in the tea vertical.
Right. So I think, Johnny, honestly, when as a young startup, I think, one of the key things you have on your side is agility, right? I think the fact that you can listen to your consumers, very quickly iterate on that and reiterate on the product multiple times over till you get the product market fit out there and then scale it up through these online channels, being a digitally native brand. I think that's where, most of us young brands have been able to actually sort of work on and sort of gain market share from some of these incumbents, right? And I think that's exactly what we have done as well, right? I mean, in fact, if you look at it, right? I mean, we launch products. I mean, we have capacities to launch products in as less as 6 weeks, right? And that's right from ideating, manufacturing it, and shipping it out for sale to consumer in the US and Europe, right? And then, of course, we still do very small batch blends, and we keep iterating on every batch based on immediate customer feedback, right? So I think that's broadly, I think, the number one, thing which has helped us and will continue to help us, hopefully going forward. Like you say, right? When I started the business, I think I didn't go for my MBA. I didn't. I didn't sit for placement. So for me, I think I'd heard of these fancy terms like market research and this and so many things you hear about. But I think for me, for the last 5 years, market research has been just reading my customer reviews every day, right? I think that's the first thing I do most of the days. And I think, that has just set the tone for what Vahdam has become. In fact, every new product we have launched, every product we have bettered, any new service we have launched, or, anything we have bettered as a brand, I think has come out from those customer reviews and, customer interactions, right? And I think, if you at any company, right, if you can focus on that, I think, because product quality, the way you position the brand, I think those are extremely important. I'm not even talking about that. They are given, right? We are product obsessed. We are quality obsessed as a company. But I think over and above that, how do you reach to your customers? How do you sort of deeply engage with your customers going forward, I think that's where some of these things I mentioned come in, and that's what has worked for us.
So the message I take from this, Bala, is that it can sometimes feel intimidating when you're trying to go into a multi-million or even multi-billion-dollar market where there's huge incumbents. But when you're the startup, there's some element of agility and smartness that you can do that can still manage to break through. And I find that very, very, very inspiring thought. That
we can fail very quickly and nobody will know, right? So I think that's the best part.
And so the last question, we're almost out of time, is a final thought. I would love it if each of you could leave us with just one tip that you would have for building a brand in today's global playing field. So Harsha, why don't you go first? One tip.
I mean, just sort of, say from our experience, what has worked for us, that we spent enough time in fine-tuning the product when we launched first. So we spent enough time on how kids were, small thing like how kids were holding the tablet while focusing on the product, what were the customers saying about the finish and the quality. So we stayed with one product for a period of 2 years. So the second product that we launched was, after 2 years after we launched the first product. And then it was easier to scale. So, in last 1 year, we have been able to launch 10 products, but that has only sort of been possible because we, fine-tuned the first product for a longer period of time. So, I mean, that is the only thing that probably, I can, share, that you need to have the correct product before thinking about anything else.
So focusing on a product, getting that product right, and then expanding. Excellent. Yeah. Trisha, what's your one tip?
So I think one of my tips is, it's one of our 7 principles at Dr. Vaidya's, is customer is our reason for being. And I think this is a very important aspect, and especially if you're trying to create a global brand, to understand exactly what your customer wants, what they need, hear what they have to say, like Bala said, right? Actually understand the customer feedback. It's critical. And give them the best experience that they can. So I think customer is a reason for being. Understand your customer. They do differ, to be very honest, per product, per region. So you do need to spend some time on that. But I would think that is one of our biggest takeaways.
So customer centricity at the core.
Yeah.
And Bala, last tip.
Absolutely, Johnny. So I think, like I mentioned before, Johnny, I think one is, of course, I think there's no better time to go global than today. So do go global as soon as you can. Sitting behind a laptop, you can actually sell to anybody in the world, right? I mean, that's the opportunity Amazon, partners like Payoneer have, sort of given us. But I think my suggestion would be the same, right? I mean, you need to know what your strength is, right? It's either your product, is that the origin story, or your product is superior, like Harshal mentioned? Is there some innovation, or is it you understand the market or your consumers better, or you have a better distribution, right? You need to know why you're I think that clarity, if you have, I think, because I mean, even though going global is great, but it is tough also, right? You need to compete with players in that market, which is tough, right? So you know what you want to win at, and then you sort of, double down on that while going global.
Wonderful tip. So I guess the conclusion there is get your product right, know your customer and put them at the center. And I think Bala's tip there is know yourself, know what your strengths are and play to your strengths. And I think this has been, for me, an absolute pleasure and privilege to chat to you guys today. I mean, this is what inspires us at Payoneer to do what we do, is people like you. I mean, our slogan is go beyond, and our belief is, in terms of inclusion, that any business anywhere in the world should have the opportunity, with this democratization that we see in the world of opportunity, to excel and grow anywhere in the world and go beyond borders, beyond expectations and beyond limits. And you three just personify that value and have got great stories at different stages of that story. I'm sure if we meet up again a year from now, there'll be more to tell, more expansion and more direction and more lessons learned as the world changes and your brands change with that. So thank you so much, Bala, Harshal and Trisha, for your time today. Thank you everybody for joining us on this session, and hand over to Amit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Bala. And thank you, Harshal. It was really, really inspiring. We have seen a lot of comments coming in for this session, and people are really inspired. And once again, I will thank you all for all the inspiration which you have given to all the entrepreneurs or the people who are dreaming to go big on a global e-commerce stage. So thanks once again. Well, guys, coming back across to our events, which has been happening since morning, like I mentioned, this was more about branding, building your brand globally, and how to market your product. So we have a partner by the name Delta Clue, who is also holding a webinar onto their booth with regards to giving some insights on how you can take your brand on a global stage. So feel free to visit them onto their booths, and it will be really, really insightful for you guys. Also, as I mentioned, we have seen some sort of a good competition going on our leaderboard, where people are visiting to various booths and downloading the brochures, fixing one-on-one meetings with each other. So keep continuing that, because at the end of the day, I'm sure it's going to get really, really tight, and we have wonderful Amazon EcoDots to give away. Also, keep visiting e-commerce tools provider booths till 3 p.m. and you will stand a chance to win Amazon EcoDots from there as well. Visit any of the booths to enter this lucky draw competition. The booth comprises of SellerApp, AdYogi, eNucleus, Unicommerce, Vinculum, Setcommerce, Growth Studios, Delta Clue, and WOB. Thank you once again to all of you for this lovely session, and I'll see you all of you guys on the next session. So stay tuned. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.